Many years ago, I went to work for the Milwaukee Brewers. It was a very interesting process to be hired to be the potential partner of Bob Uecker, Mr. Baseball. And I remember that first dinner I had with Bob, where he was really gracious, was funny, of course, as always. He can't help himself, but I was nervous, and he knew it. But we got through it. It was a good meal, and ultimately they did hire me. So a few days after that, we were at spring training in Phoenix, and it was time to do some recordings. We had needed to do some liners for our various affiliates on the Brewers radio network, as well as many other recordings. And before the gentleman who was going to sort of run all this whole process of all these recordings got there, Bob and Kent Sommerfeld, who's our longtime producer engineer, great man, they were kind of joking around that this guy that's coming to help us is really good at his job, but he's got really bad breath. And so they were just laughing and they were cutting up about it. And I'm like, I'm still petrified because I barely even know these guys. But anyway, so the gentleman finally does arrive and we start doing some recordings, and he's leaning over people's shoulders to look at the copy, and Euchre's giving these knowing glances around the room and all that. And so everybody was having fun in their own way, except this gentleman didn't. We were careful not to insult him. But anyway, so we did some recordings, and then we decided we were going to take a break. So the gentleman left the room from the Brewers, and it was just the three of us, and we chatted for a little bit, and then we went back to the recordings. But when he came back in, the representative from the Brewers, I wandered over by him, and I said, hey, I'm just chatting with him for a second, and I said, hey, I'm going to get a breath mint here. I happen to have some in my pocket. Would you like one? And he said, sure, that'd be great. And unbeknownst to me, because I was petrified to look at Kent and Bob, those two were rolling in the floor, that I actually was able to get this guy to have a breath mint, and they thought that was just perfect. That was kind of my icebreaker with the Brewers and the Brewers radio network. Shortly thereafter, we did our first spring training game, and Bob could see I was very nervous about that. And he said something to me that I've never forgotten, and that he truly lived the whole time I knew him in his life. And that is, he said, look, it's a baseball game. We're just going to have a few laughs. We're just going to have some fun. I don't care about nothing. So you just relax. We're going to have a good time. Enjoy yourself. And that's pretty much the edict that I took as my marching orders throughout my 13 years with Bob Uecker. And boy, he was true to his word the whole time. One thing I had to learn right away was what life was going to be like with Bob Uecker as my partner. Obviously, nobody knew who I was, and everybody knew who the number one was, and that was Bob Uecker. But I didn't know till we went on the first road trip exactly what I was in for. We pulled up at the hotel on the team bus outside New York, outside our New York hotel, and the players get up and they start, disembarking from the bus. And I'm sitting in the back with Kent Sommerfeld. We're not going anywhere. We're waiting for everybody else. And after a while, we realized that all the players had gotten off. There's a huge throng of people. There's autograph seekers. There's cameras. The fans are all over the place, as they always are in New York. And so the players were going out, but I noticed they were just kind of walking by the fans. They weren't really stopping. And then at some point, I realized all the players were off the bus, and I knew what the fans were waiting for. They weren't waiting for the players. They weren't looking for the players' autographs or the pictures. They were waiting for Bob Uecker. And thus began my education on what it's like to be around someone so good, so talented, and so famous. So a lot of people ask me, why did Bob stay in Milwaukee? Why would you stay in Milwaukee where everybody in the entire state knows you instantly? You can't go to the grocery. You can't fill up your car with gas. We knew other teams had been trying to lure Bob away from the Brewers, thinking the Brewers are paupers and they don't have enough money, and we can certainly outbid them, and we'll get Bob Uecker, George Steinbrenner being a notable example. We'll get Bob Uecker here to New York, and he'll come work for the Yankees, and he'll be my guy. And he asked Bob repeatedly, and Bob was always polite, and he always turned them down. Because one thing Bob never did was he never forgot his roots. He was born and raised in Milwaukee. He's from a blue-collar background, and in this day and age, people are busy and they're on their phones and they're not paying attention. They're disrespectful. A lot of my friends say, I don't even really like to socialize anymore. You just never know what you're going to be talking to or what you're going to bump into. But one thing about Bob is he never thought about things like that. Bob Uecker loves people. And that's why he stayed in Milwaukee, because those were his people. He loves the blue-collar people. He doesn't care if you're rich or you're poor, if you're in a wheelchair or you're walking. He doesn't care if you're a Brewers fan or not. If you meet Bob Uecker, you are instant friends with him. And that's how I know for sure, Bob, when his spirit passed yesterday, which is still a little fresh for a lot of us, that he went straight to heaven, because nobody can influence that many people on a constant basis, day in, day out, making the world a better place and not end up in heaven. Plus, I know that God is sitting up there probably already mad at himself for making Bob wait almost 91 years. And he was ready for his turn. So I'm sure Bob went right to the left-hand side of our Heavenly Father. And they're probably sitting back right now making fun of me doing this podcast talking about Bob, if I know Bob at all. But that's the way things go when you're working with Bob. In closing for now, first of all, I want to mention we're going to have a special Fans First podcast that's coming in the very near future, in which we deal with nothing but Bob Uecker stories from the people who know him best. So look for that episode to be coming up down the road. I want to leave you with this also, more of a personal note. Bob was by far the best broadcast teammate that I ever had. But more importantly, he was one of my very best friends in my life. He was also one of my most important and trusted confidants, and someone who loved my wife, Emmy, and my 3 daughters unconditionally, always welcomed them into our booth. And also, by the way, just as a sidebar, kind of a little bonus, he's the funniest son of a gun in the entire world. No one has ever graced this planet who has more natural humor than Bob Uecker. He can kill any crowd. But you know what I loved best about Bob? He was one that never cracked a joke that was laced with profanity to try and shock an audience into laughing. Anybody can do that, Bob felt. He didn't say it out loud. He didn't articulate, that he looked down on other comedians. But the fact that he could kill a huge crowd over and over and never utter a profane word, unlike all the other comics that I see anyway, the F-bombs flying everywhere, that was not Bob's style. And I think he was very proud that not only was he good at comedy, but he could do it in the right way. But please, if you have time, go on the internet. If you're a little older, you're a little younger, and maybe you weren't around when Bob was in his heyday, do some searching. Laugh your butt off. You'll love it. And in a couple of weeks, we'll have an episode with nothing but Uecker's thoughts and stories, and it's going to be a classic. So thank you so much for indulging me to let me tell you a little bit about Bob Uecker that you might otherwise not know. A guy who loves people no matter where they come and what their walk of life was, and never forgot where he was coming from, no matter how famous he got. So thank you for indulging me again. I'm Jim Powell. Stay tuned in just a moment. Our upcoming episode of Fans First podcast with Tony Barnhart will begin right now.
Welcome to Fans First, a sports podcast where your voice matters most. Hosted by Hall of Fame sportscaster Jim Powell. This is the show that puts fans at the heart of the conversation. Whether you're cheering in the stands, screaming at the TV, or debating with friends about the latest trades, Fans First is here to amplify your thoughts, your insights, and your love for the game.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Fans First, a sports podcast. I'm your host, Jim Powell, and we're joined today by a man who should have learned the first time, Tony Barnhart, making his second appearance on Fans First. We had a great time the first time, and now we're right on the cusp of the national championship game in college football, and Tony is the man. He's Mr. College Football. Tony, great to see you again. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Jim. It's always good to be with you.
So how excited are you, both in terms of seeing the upcoming game, but also in terms of maybe getting to play a little golf or, do some gardening or something besides college football for a little while?
Well, this is the playoff, Jim, has been great. A lot of people ask me what I thought about it, has it been effective. I just think it's been a great thing for college football. More teams involved, more storylines involved, and we got Notre Dame and Ohio State, two iconic brands that are playing in this game. I think it's going to be a really good football game and real excitement. And hey, I get a home game. I'm home, so I don't have
That's right.
So
They're coming into your backyard for you. That's what you do for Mr. College Football.
I've got friends. A lot of my media buddies are coming in from out of town. We've got a couple of dinners planned. So this is sort of our end of the year celebration at the national championship game.
Let's go back to, we obviously talked a lot about college football and the way things are evolving and the changes and all of that, the turmoil that's the way the fans see it, as turmoil now in college football with the portal and the NIL and all of that. I want to talk to you about the ranking system with, the committee going through each week and deciding where people were going to rank. And, Kirby Smart was particularly vocal, kind of taking up the microphone that Nick Saban dropped a couple of years ago to talk about, show us the criteria. What are we supposed to be doing to make sure we have a authentic rank? What are your thoughts on the way the ranking went, either in the very beginning and then as the season went along? Did it smooth out?
The bottom line was that this was never going to be the final product. We knew there were going to be adjustments made, and there had to be adjustments made because of the criteria that was set up in terms of who gets the buys, seating. The seating in no way represented the quality of the field. Okay, they may have ranked them 1 through 12, but they didn't seed them 1 through 12, and I thought that was problematic. It really messed up the bracket. But put all that aside, we're not going to have any major changes in the off season. But in 2026, everything is on the table. That's when this current contract ends after one more year. Everything is on the table, and that's when the serious discussion is going to really take place.
Even if things were a little rocky through the ranking system and all of that in the way you've already described, do you think in the end that they got it right? I mean, is this the best matchup, or were there other matchups that they should have had more available that could have supplanted this one?
Well, I think they got it right. I mean, again, the way it was set up, there was, Boise State was going to be your number 4 seed. We know that Boise State was not the number 4 seed, but the way the configuration happened, that's what happened. But how can you argue with the Final Four that we had and the quality of the games in the Final Four? So, again, more people got involved. We in college football tend to make the perfect the enemy of the good. We do that a lot, and that happened here. But I'm excited about the future. And Notre Dame and Ohio State, how are you going to beat that? I mean, that's a great game, and the ratings are going to be off the charts.
Even people that don't like college football will be watching just because it's Notre Dame and Ohio State. You're exactly
right.
Like
people that watch the Super Bowl, Jim, they have no interest in football whatsoever, but it's the Super Bowl. And so we'll have a big turnout Monday night.
Are you surprised that Ohio State is as big a favorite? This is not a gambling show, obviously, so I'm not asking you to hand out gambling advice, but are you surprised at the size of that line? I mean, 8+ points?
Yes. When I saw it, I went, my reaction was, whoa, 9.5. Now, the money's come in. Now it's down to 8.5, and I understand that. But to me, that's still a lot of points in a game like this. But I told everybody this. I said, if the Ohio State team that we saw in the early rounds of this tournament, if that team shows up Monday night, not going to happen. That's how good they are playing right now and hitting on all cylinders. But I think what we've got here, Jim, is we've got a combination of who's got the most talented team, who has the most NFL draft choices. That would be the Ohio State University. Who has luck on their side? Who has just intangibles, the X factors? I think Notre Dame, it feels like a team of destiny. Now, destiny may not be strong enough to overcome 15 NFL draft choices, but it's going to be a good game. And I really don't think that number is going to hold up over the course of the night.
Well, that was my first thought when I saw the line and I saw where it was settling in. I thought, Notre Dame is all about running the football, shortening games, playing great defense. And you've already pointed out the intangibles that they have, the mystique of Notre Dame. They've got the luck of the Irish on their side. You got to believe. So, I'm not a college football gambler, so I have no money in this. Just an interest in the game. But I feel like Notre Dame is maybe a little underrated in this contest going in.
No, I agree. And that's why I'm tempted to pick. I haven't made my pick yet, but I'm tempted to pick Notre Dame because they've just got the intangibles on their side. You just when it's one game, one night. You don't have to be better. You just have to be better than them that night. And I've seen it over the course of my career. I've been in that situation many times. I remember the 1983 NCAA championship, NC State and Jim Valvano beat Phi Slamma Jamma, one of the greatest collections of basketball talent ever, but they found a way to win. So I think that drama is what's going to carry us through on Monday night.
So which side do you think is going to dictate this game? Because the line is the over-under line is in the 45 to 46 point range. That's in keeping with a lot of the scores that we saw in the playoffs up to this point. Notre Dame keeps games fairly low scoring, and Ohio State, of course, has all that explosive talent, and they can score at will, it seems, when they're on. So which team do you think is going to dictate? Is it the defensive-minded lucky Irish, or is it the overwhelming talent of Ohio State?
Well, I think it's the defense is going to dictate this game. I mean, they're so good Notre Dame is so good defensively. I think they're going to keep it. I'm not a gambling guy, but if I were, I would take the under because I just think it's going to be that kind of game. And just looking back to what Notre Dame has done in the tournament, I think they have been really, really consistent and found ways to win games. Well, I think the other night in the semifinals, Riley Leonard is out of the game. They're down 10-0. Riley Leonard's out of the game, and you're going, man, this. There's just no way. A backup quarterback gets them a 3-point drive to end the half. It's 10-3, and then they come out and score 24 unanswered points. And so I think those kind of intangibles are hard to match.
Is there a coaching advantage one way or the other between these two coaches? They're both very highly thought of. Obviously, the Bears are already trying to steal Notre Dame's coach, and Ryan Day, always under fire, it seems, no matter whether he's, he just loses a little too often to Michigan. If he didn't do that, everybody with Ohio State would just think he was some sort of a college football god. But, he's done a great job with this team, and he's done a great job for several years in a row.
Right. Well, think about where they were on the morning after they lost to Michigan in November 28th, and where they were, and there was how was he going to survive all of this? But here he is, within a cusp of a national championship, and I think Ryan Day is a really good football coach. I told somebody the other day, well, what happens if they fired him? I said, well, if Ryan Day gets fired, he would be unemployed about a minute and a half.
Right.
He's that good of a coach, and everybody who follows football, who knows anything about football, knows that he's a good coach. But I will say this, in Marcus Freeman, you got a rising star, just turned 39 years old. The players are incredibly loyal to him. He was the guy that the players wanted. They told Jack Swarbrick that. They told Jack Swarbrick, the AD, when he was making his search, he said, Mr. Swarbrick, one thing you don't want to do is bring in somebody who's going to change the culture. We, the players, have created this culture. Don't bring anybody in who's going to change it. And I thought that spoke volumes about the kids who play at Notre Dame.
Do you think Coach Freeman will eschew the pros? I mean, the Chicago Bears come calling, knocking on your door. You're coaching in that neighborhood. I mean, that's got to be something he's got to at least think about.
Sure, and I understand that, and he obviously loves it there. The question is, what sort of offer is on the table? There's no question the love that exists between him and these players, but life is life. And again, he's only 39 years old, so that would be a very intriguing set of circumstances.
I want to ask you about Kirby Smart and his Georgia team. Obviously, the season didn't go as smoothly for him as we've been accustomed to seeing happen in Athens. And right all the way to you get to New Orleans and his father passes. I don't know what would have happened if Georgia had made the championship game or, had continued to play. I don't know how Kirby would have handled that. I don't know how I could have handled it. I don't know how anybody could handle it, especially considering all we know about, the influence that the elder Smart had on the younger one. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, obviously, it was a very difficult time for Coach Smart and his family. And the thing you have to understand about this Georgia team, Jim, this is a very good Georgia team, good enough to win the national championship if things fell into place. But this team is not as talented overall as the three teams that came before. Two national championships, and then last year, had Georgia made the playoff, they were good enough to win the national championship. It was clear that there were missing pieces on this team, whereas the other one go no further than Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey. Those two guys right there were the guys that helped Carson Beck time after time after time when he was in trouble. He found one of those guys. Georgia's wide receivers did not play well this year. There's no nice way to put it. Led the nation. How about this? You led the nation in drop passes. How'd you like to be leading that hit parade? So
that is not one of the categories you're shooting to win.
And this team is good. They just aren't great. Whereas the last three Georgia teams, I think, have been great. And so Kirby Smart has got to hit the recruiting trail, hit the transfer portal, and do something. But really about his wide receivers, he's got to settle on the quarterback. Is it going to be Gunnar Stockton? Is it going to be somebody else? It's not going to be Carson Beck. We know that. And so the program is in such good shape. He needs to do some offseason tweaking and shore up some positions. But when we start talking about next season, Georgia's going to be right there, just as they have been the last 4 years.
Do you think Gunnar Stockton will be the opening day starting quarterback for Georgia? I know that's one of those unanswerable questions we like to ask.
Probably because he's played a good bit. But isn't that a nice problem to have if you're Kirby Smart? I've got four really good quarterbacks, and one of them is going to win the job, and that is where you want to be.
So what does Mr. College Football do when college football comes to an end? Do you become Mr. College Basketball? Do you become Mr. Husband to my wife and doing following her honeydew list? What do you do?
Well, I do the honeydew list and stuff. My wife and I probably going to travel some this summer. We've been putting off a couple of big trips we'd like to do, and quite honestly, Jim, I'm in a situation in my career now. I don't work as hard as I used to, and that's by design. And so I tend to enjoy the off season. I've got two grandchildren that live exactly 1 mile away from me, and I like to spend time with them. And so but you keep one eye on what's going on in college football. But I'm not as busy as I used to be, and that's the way I like it.
Do you watch much college basketball?
I do. I love college basketball. I've been to 23 Final Fours over the course of my career, and I don't follow it that closely during the regular season. But once the tournament starts, I'm all in. I am totally all in. I love the NCAA basketball tournament.
Well, University of Georgia is actually winning some games in college basketball so far, and they're selling out Stegman, and I mean it's like a whole new deal in Athens. I know that happens, on many different campuses depending on the player personnel. But Mike White did a great job revamping that roster, and they have a lot going for them. That's for sure.
Well, there's no reason. I've told this to many folks. There's no reason that the University of Georgia should not be good in basketball. We've got too many players in Metro Atlanta alone. We've got too many good players, and they're great players throughout the South. And I think Mike's done a very good job at Georgia. Oh, by the way, though, you are playing in an SEC that has reached probably its all-time high in the number of great teams it has. Somebody told me if we started the tournament tomorrow, there'd be 12 or 13 SEC teams in the tournament. Wow. That's going to be – how'd you like to be on that committee?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, Georgia's reward for beating Kentucky and Oklahoma back-to-back was take on Tennessee and Auburn now. So good luck with all that. That's a uphill climb. I want to flip back to football just for a minute to just ask you, I'm sure, with all the people you talk to and as closely as you follow it, you've got some sense of which direction college football is going to go in the future. We talked, a couple months ago about what was happening at that time. Now I'm wondering what's going to happen between now and next fall with college football. What changes or tweaks or what kind of things do you predict will happen?
Well, there's no question that the powers that be have trying to figure out a way to get a handle around the NIL situation. and how that's going to work. And the bottom line is, remember, next year is the year that every team will have a salary cap of about $22 million, and you will directly pay the players next year. And so they'll determine, what does my quarterback get the largest share of the salary cap? Yep, probably so. And so that is going to be interesting. The transfer portal is a situation where it's going to be, until they get the players under contract, I don't see what they're going to be able to do about the transfer portal, because the courts have been very, very clear. If you're not going to restrict the movements of the coaches, you're not going to restrict the movements of the players. And, but that's not good for college basketball. Well, the judge says that would be your problem. That's not the court's problem. And so I don't think anything is going to get done until we have some sort of collective bargaining agreement and players are literally under contract. You want me to stay 3 years at your school? That's great. Let's sign a contract that you're going to pay me those 3 years. But it's not just going to happen because people are inconvenienced by players leaving to go somewhere else. This was the clash we always knew was coming. What was best for college football versus following the law. And what we have found is that the law wins.
Are ardent fans just going to have to sit back and wait on Congress to do something to try and make them happier about what the state of college football is?
The issue with Congress is pretty simple. They need an antitrust exemption. That way, the problem is they could come up with the rules to deal with this tomorrow, but they will get sued. Every time it happens, you will get sued. And they have told Congress, you got to help us out so that we're not in court every single day. Every time you're going to have to give us an answer. That's what they did in baseball. Baseball had an antitrust exemption. That's going to happen here. That's what people say. What can Congress do? That's what Congress could do. Congress could impose an antitrust waiver. And so until that happens, the transfer portal is not going to change.
Tony, I promised you I wouldn't keep you all day. I know you've got a lot of stuff going on, but I do want to ask you I know you said you haven't released your pick yet on the national championship game, but I'm interested if you can give us a hint.
Oh, I'm going to lean toward Notre Dame because it's fun. I mean, this is, last time I checked, all of this was supposed to be fun. And I don't bet money, so I don't care who wins. But what an incredible! I root for stories. I'm an old newspaper guy, and all us newspaper guys, we root. Hey, all I want to know is what's the best story that we're going to get. And for Notre Dame, I've been writing a column for later on this week that says, is Notre Dame a team of destiny? Notre Dame's not supposed to win this game. They're not supposed to win it. But are they a team of destiny? And wouldn't that be cool if that happens and they get the championship and get awarded on Monday night?
Well, like you, I'm not rooting in particular for either team. I've never been an Ohio State fan, and I always get mad because Notre Dame, I feel like, and other teams up in the Big Ten seem to benefit from some bias on the part of some ranking people, whether it's AP top 20s or whatever it might be. Even the way it was ranked on and off throughout the season leading up to the college football playoff. So I don't care about either team, but I'm with you. I hope it's a thriller right down to the end and something crazy happens and people are still talking about it 10 years from now.
I'm with you. Let's have a great night.
Tony, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for braving our podcast for a second time. We really appreciate that. You're the first return guest that we've invited, and we were very grateful that you accepted. And we look forward to talking to you more as we get closer to college football season. We get into the summertime and start seeing what's going on in the world of college football.
All right, Jim, it's good to be with you.
Thank you, Tony. Well, thank you so much for joining us for today's episode of Fans First, a sports podcast. Don't forget to follow us on X and on Instagram, Facebook. Please find us on the YouTube channel. Our Fans First YouTube channel is waiting for you. If you like our Fans First content, you can help us by making sure you subscribe to all of our social networks. Don't forget about our Fans First website at fansfirstpodcast.com. That's where you can find all of our previous episodes that you may have missed. To be included as a guest on an episode, send your voice memo, video file, or written memo to jim@fansfirstpodcast.com. Please keep your submissions to no more than 45 seconds in length. If you cheat a little bit, we'll help you out if it's good enough. We want you to be part of our show. We're so glad you joined us for today's episode. We look forward to seeing you again soon here on Fans First, a sports podcast.
Stay tuned, stay passionate, and keep celebrating the sport you love. Visit us at fansfirstpodcast.com to explore more. Sign up for our newsletter to receive exclusive updates and follow the podcast on social media to join our growing community of sports enthusiasts. Your voice matters to us, so don't hesitate to share your thoughts and connect with fellow fans. See you next time.